Excellent. Hi, everybody. Colin Stevenson here, joined by my hero, John Lenhart. Hi, John.
Hi.
Now, today's a very exciting day for me. I was out of action there for a couple of weeks and we didn't manage to get this done, and I've been waiting and waiting for it. Today, we're doing Psychology 5. Now, Psychology Part 5 is the grand conclusion, and I do believe it's about repairing, John. It's about repairing our clients, repairing the people that come to us asking for help, and, you know, taking away and dissolving the problems that they initially come in with. Now, would you like to start us off and explain, please?
Yes, so the first thing I try to do is ask people what their definition of repair is. Because that's ultimately what we want to do, is we want to repair. Psychology ought to repair people. And the issue is people say, well, the definition of repair is to fix something. And I say, fix it how? Like, fix it back to where it originally was? And they might say yes. And I'm like, okay. You know, because that's actually the definition of that is restoration.
Yeah.
So if you take an old car and you make it exactly the way it was when it came off the lot, you know, the assembly line, that's called restoration. That is not actually the definition of repair. And I'm fine with people having the definition of repair be what is actually restoration. That doesn't bother me. I don't ever, you know, make people have my definitions. The word isn't important. The importance is that they get the definition. So what I'll say to people is, if they say, yeah, repair is getting something back to originally was, I'll go, okay, great. Now, what would you call fixing something to where it was better than it originally was? And that's when they go, Now notice, I don't care what word they use. They could call it super restoration. That's the actual definition of repair, but it doesn't matter what word they use. It matters that they have now been exposed to a definition, and they now have the ability in their brain to make a connection into a forest, into a part of their forest, the dendrites of their brain, that is very profitable and is very healthy. So to me, I don't care what word you use, but repair is the ability to fix something and make it better than it originally was. Psychology ought to help people be better than they originally were than before they had the problem.
Yes, sorry, I was getting so excited there when you said that, because if I was to teach you what you had done wrong, as well as bringing you back to the status you had, that means you have then grown, and you will recognize going down that same road again and stop yourself without having to go to therapy, without having to go for treatment, without relapsing as easy. I'm not saying everybody won't relapse as easy, because it can happen, okay, through our traits, our behaviors, and things that we've learned through life. Although I feel when people are, you know, it's okay, there you are, you're restored to health. Now, I want to put this as a computer game, right? And I just want to make this analogy with you. If you and I have got some sort of shooting game where we're like in an army or something like that, and what happens is we take a couple of hits and then we go and we hide and we reload and we eat the health food or we eat the health drink, and it puts us back to where we are again. It's not giving us any shield. Now, the shield would be repairing beyond what you could have, so that if you've taken a couple of hits, you still have full capacity. You know, you're still running on full capacity. And I play this game with my son. My son's 10 and he plays Fortnite, okay? And it's very, very popular. Now, I do limit how much he plays because I prefer interaction between us, but it's a connection that him and I have. And we play it for maybe an hour every day or every couple of days. Now, in Fortnite, you get 100 health, but you also get up to 100 shield. Now, the shield stops you from getting hurt, which means that you can learn the game going forward. Now, I know this is going off on a tangent, but it is coming back. What he has learned through that, and we have discussed it, believe it or not, is that he wouldn't go down the same road to be able to be attacked by another player. So he would have to be more tactical next time. However, he would be learning again, but he has the shield this time and not just his health.
So my son also played Fortnite a couple of years ago, and I also, when I go in the classroom, a lot of these people, even girls, are playing Fortnite in the classroom. And so I use this analogy all the time. So unfortunately, I know all about Fortnite. And so when we start talking about games, because we'll do a video on games, we'll talk all about, there's only 4 types of games and how games affect the brain. So we'll talk about that. But the thing is that in Fortnite, you can get different bodysuits, you can get different things that you're better. So repair in that analogy. So everything you talked about was what I call sustainable. Repair is when you first started playing the game, you were susceptible. Now, when you get certain body armor, body suits, you're now better than you were when you originally started. That's great. That's the repair aspect. The issue is so many people are focused on sustainability. Basically, they want to be sustainable, whether it's in business, it's just getting back to even. And the problem with sustainability is you are one catastrophic event away from falling apart. So even as a psychologist, if you help people be sustainable, once they have a trauma, and that's why people have a trauma, psychologists will basically say, look, they won't say this, but what they're saying is your life is over. This is going to limit you for the rest of your life. We're going to just try to help you get back to where you were before the trauma. And I'm telling you that this video is going to talk about how to get somebody beyond where they originally were before the trauma, actually using the trauma to end up in a better spot. And we call that generativity. So when I see people talking about sustainability, that's like having a budget that every month you end up at 0. And that's great. And you can do that indefinitely. But the minute you have a health problem or a problem with your car you didn't expect, you can never get out of that hole. Sustainability is putting you one catastrophic event away from disaster. Why aren't we being generative? Why aren't we helping people get above the hole? And the reason is what are the 4 reasons why people crash? What are the 4 reasons why people get in a hole? From the very beginning of the psychology series, I've used this analogy of driver in a car. Your uniqueness is the driver. Your brain is the car. Is it a good thing to drive your car off the road? Well, what's the 4 reasons your car goes off the road? Number 1, you could be avoiding an oncoming truck. If you're on a 2-lane highway, there's a truck driving right down the center of the road, you should drive off the road. You can do that. Someone's coming at you. We called it 320. Someone's coming at you triggering. You can avoid that. You can drive off the road, and that's a good thing. 160, you could be driving around a corner and the back half of the curve has solid ice. You're going to hit that and everybody's going to drive off the road. I don't care how good of a driver you are. I don't care how good your car is. If you're coming around a turn in the back half and you didn't know it is ice, you're sliding off the road. So your context can make you, go off the road and have a problem. We talked about that earlier with the personality test, the 4 temperaments, and every personality test is covering this 160. It's covering your context. What context causes you to go off the road? And that's what you want to know. So there's a value in these personality tests in figuring out this, why did your car go off the road kind of against your will? Well, because you were at 160 and they did this thing. They put this ice on the road, you went off. Okay, that's great. That's resolved. We talked about that. The 80 is a mechanical problem. If your steering wheel suddenly doesn't work, if your brakes cut out, your car is crashing. This is where people want to deal with resiliency. This is where their mental, your conscious brain is your steering wheel, it's your gas pedal, it's your brake. When you kind of lose your conscious brain, you're going to go off the road. And so everybody's talking about that, resiliency, and sustainability. That's what everybody's focused on. The final reason you drive your car off your road is you're mismatched to your car. We talked about this with your uniqueness. If you're a truck driver driving a sports car, that car is going off the road. If you're a sports car driver driving a truck, that truck's going off the road. So are you matched for your car, your uniqueness. Are you running your brain according to your uniqueness, or are you running your brain according to what everybody else is telling you? You need to run your brain the way I run my brain. Your brain is unique to you. Do you know how to run your brain from your uniqueness?
Yes, and this is where I have this conversation with clients all the time, and it's like, you know, the who are you question. I always ask them, do you know your uniqueness? And 99.999999999% of the time, unless they've spoken to you or I beforehand, say no, right? And the reason they don't know is because they're not taught from a young age. And I just want to go into this just slowly because we can do another video on it. From school, they are taught to learn one way and do one thing the same as everybody and just go, go, go. And it's just, they're not taught to bring out their own uniqueness in any way, shape, or form. And it's almost suppressed from such a young age. So when they start to believe, my parents think that I should be a psychologist, a lawyer, a dentist, a shop worker, they go around this because it's expected of them, or because the money's going to be good, or because not a lot of people, just like the car you're speaking about, their uniqueness, their job that is a car, you know, they don't match themselves up because they don't know, they don't have the ability to find out. And I find when people go to psychologists, that it's good to get diagnosis. It's good for the you know, they've done much work throughout the years that they can diagnose things, but they don't understand the person's uniqueness that's sitting right in front of them to be able to help them repair. And this is why I find it frustrating, because I know the majority of psychologists want to help people and they want to bring people back, but they think sustainability, because that's what they were taught through the education system, they feel that sustainability is all they have to do, and they don't have the extra tools to lift these people up beyond where they were before and really create that extra energy within them and themselves doing a job. I mean, I know that the clients that you and I have, like when we help somebody, we know we've went above and beyond. We actually give them that extra boost, you know, like that nitrous button, and they can press it and they can press it and they can just force themselves forward because they start to understand. I would love for psychologists all over the world, no matter how high up doctor they are, you know, I want them to really understand that there are more methods that they can add to what they have to allow people to repair.
So I don't want to get off on a tangent either, but you've made so many great points. I just have to deal with this. So I look at it as if you were watching a car go down the road. When you look at how that car, what kind of car is it and how is it being driven? Because you can see someone who knows how to drive their car or their truck. You can see someone who doesn't know what they're doing. You can see someone who's thinking way too much. And that's the way I see people. I look at people just like I could look at somebody driving a car and go, that car is not driving itself. What I'm seeing from that car is an effect of the driver. And is that driver match with their car? Is that driver driving their car the right way? And that's the issue, is if we teach everybody to drive their car a certain way and it's in opposition to their car, to their brain, they're going to have all this frustration and you're going to see they're tight and they're frustrated. So to flesh that out, I know a woman who she ended up getting a psychology degree and she ended up being in charge of special ed at a school. And she originally went to school to be a chemical engineer, which I'm a chemical engineer.
Yeah.
And what was interesting is she's compassion server. And this is years ago, she went and she was 2 years. She was a chemical engineer 2 years, and then she switched to psychology. She was the only woman at that time at this college in chemical engineering. And she eventually stopped doing it, and she believed she just wasn't smart enough to do it. And then over the years, she made all these friends who were chemical engineers in college. You make all your friends the first 2 years. Yeah. And so she is seen on Facebook. They go on really nice vacations and they have really nice cars. You know, we get paid really well as chemical engineers. And she's just like feeling that. Now, when I met her, I told her, I said, you were never going to be a chemical engineer. because you're a compassion server. And I told her, I said, I know another woman who muscled through being a chemical engineer as a compassion server, and she wanted to kill herself until she stopped doing that and is now a life coach and is helping people counseling. In order to be an engineer, you got to be a teacher how or a teacher why. Yep. And that was never going to fit you. It was going to drain you. Yes, you could do it, but you're going to lose all your energy and you're not a robot. Besides, if you want to change the world, chemical engineering is not going to change the world. Chemicals are not going to change the world. Being in where you're at in the school, you can affect the next generation and you can actually help these kids affect their families. Her frustration was, she goes, I hate psychology because they don't know what's in the black box. And her whole thing was chemical engineers. What a chemical engineer is trained in is they look at everything as a black box. They look at it as everything as there's stuff going in to this plant, there's stuff coming out. That's a black box. It's my job to figure out what's in the black box. And I told her, I said, I just smiled. I said, you know, I was this chemical engineer. I won all these awards. I solved all these problems. I'm an inventor. I've done all these things. And why am I here? Why am I doing this and dealing with psychology? Because I took my chemical engineering and applied it to the black box. I have a model for the mind and brain because I used my chemical engineering to do it. That's why no one else has this model, because everybody's trying to model it from psychology, but you need to model it from being a chemical engineer. And now that she has this model, she is able to help people and she's able to do all these things. So I call her a chemical engineer. The way she approaches everything is the way an engineer would approach everything. She's fantastic. But only doing this with chemicals would have worn her out and she would have crashed her car or she'd have driven it off a cliff. So I completely agree with you. This is important to help these kids at as young an age as possible learn how to drive their brain.
Yeah, and we don't give them the chance. You know, we ask them what they like. Well, I like football, I like dancing, but that's not who they are. They're not a dancer, they're not a footballer. And, you know, and we've spoken about perceivers, you know, perceiver kids that like to kind of, you know, they get wrongly diagnosed with kind of autism and things like that, you know, and it's because we don't understand the kid's uniqueness from the very, very beginning. But also we're not doing it with adults either when they're coming in. So if we're not doing it as kids, they're becoming sick adults or unhappy adults, and then we treat the adults and they're becoming still unhappy adults, we're not actually doing anything that's allowing people to be happy and gain energy because we're not allowing them to understand their uniqueness. Now, do I know anybody else in the world or have I seen anybody else in the world that does this? No, not since I've met you. Before I met you, did I know anybody? Absolutely not. And I've got lots of friends in psychology, dentistry, doctorate. I've got them in all sorts of different fields that are kind of classes, kind of higher class fields of work, you know, not the shop assistant type stuff. And whenever I speak to people, and any kind of psychologist, clinical psychologist, industrial psychologists, you know, marriage counsellors, and I speak to them about this, that their minds are blown because they're like, what you've just told me there has actually triggered some things in my brain that I'm able to go and actually look at now. Because even them just knowing themselves actually has more.
Right. So we talked about, you know, this is a two-step process. So the first step is, we said it's synthesis. The first step is to look away from the person and figure out who they are. So you figure out your uniqueness, not analysis, looking at them, which a personality test does. All these things are analysis. The first step is synthesis. So we saw that in the Intangible Driver test, who you are is your why, and it's the effect you want other people to experience. That's away from you. That's why it prevents racism. It prevents sexism, because I'm learning about you by not looking at you. The minute I look at you to learn you, now I can be racist or sexist. So step one was the synthesis, finding uniqueness, finding the driver. Step two was the thought process, the gear you're in. And that's more where we can do the analysis. That's more where we can step into talking to you. we use the analogy of a wall storage unit. So what I want to provide to all these psychologists, and this is what I do, because the psychologists have all this experience, and all of their experience is valid. I'll never tell anybody in the world your experience is not valid.
Yeah.
If solving a problem is 10 steps, everybody has steps 3 through 10. All of the psychologists have steps 3 through 10, and it's great. They are missing step 1 and 2. When they get step 1 and 2, they can apply their experience and be right every time. And I use that analogy that the psychologists have all these tools. They're in piles. When they approach a client, they go to a pile, they pick a tool, they try it. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it repairs, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it restores, sometimes it doesn't. What I'm going to do is build you a wall storage unit. I'm going to build you this wall storage unit. I'm going to take all your tools and put it in this storage unit. Then all you do is you do step 1, step 2, and that'll tell you what section to go in your experience. When you go to that section, you'll see your experience, 4, 5, 6 things. You can pick any one of those that you want, and it will work every time, and it will lead to repair. That's what I'm trying to do. So the psychologists have all these tools. That's great. I just want to help psychologists make their tools work every time. That's all I'm offering. So I'm not saying you're wrong, psychologists. I'm saying this is how to make this work all the time. And this synthesis step, this looking away, is so crucial. Because the thing is when we've talked about this, your unconscious brain is 90% of your brain, and it's in charge of all the behavior, and it's reflexive. Everything in psychology, every psychologist I talk to, the model is conscious brain. What you can do conscious, and they'll say subconscious. The subconscious is part of the conscious. Remember, the subconscious is, what's the name of your first pet? Or what's the name of your 3rd grade teacher? It's something you can intentionally get, but it's not immediate. It's sub in your conscious. Your unconscious is the part of you you cannot directly access. So when I see people using the term subconscious wrong, I know they don't know what they're talking about. What psychologists need to realize is they need to take a backward step. They need to go the other way, and then all of their, they need to take the synthesis step, and then all of their experience will make sense. So that's what I'm trying to do, is I'm trying to do that. So the example of that is, if you look at it, like, I'll take an example of like bipolar.
Yep.
We look at the person and their chemicals are out of whack. And so what we do is say we need to treat their chemicals. We're making the chemicals a cause, and so we're going to address it. If we understand that their uniqueness is causing them to run their car fast and slow, and that does so much wear and tear on the car, it throws the chemicals out of whack, we're going to fix the way they drive. And they won't need any medication. That's what I've done. I've helped 2 people get off bipolar medication because I fixed the way they drive, and now they don't have a chemical imbalance, and now they move on. That's dissolved. Where psychologists have this backwards is they look at the chemical effect and make it a cause. Well, the reason they're out of balance is their chemicals are out of balance. No, their thinking's out of balance, and the effect is the chemicals are out of balance. Don't you want to fix the way they drive their car? Because their driving is wearing out their car and throwing out the fluids in the car.
Yep. And just while you're going on that subject there, I'm not a doctor. I have not got a psychology degree, and I will put that out there quite happily. Although when I get clients, and how I help clients is I give them all an option. And I give them an option to find out their uniqueness first. I allow them to learn about themselves and then ask me questions based on that. After they do that, I will ask them questions based on their uniqueness, and then they feel understood. At that point, the connection's a lot stronger than trying to analyze and looking at their behaviors and what's happening and where and what medication. So when I explain that and explain when they go through, I allow them to work with themselves. And it's like I am there as their support, and it allows them. So I have seen people come off medication themselves without being prompted, without anything, because they realize that they don't need it. And they realize that all they have to do to, as you just quite rightly said, to balance their own chemicals out in their brain, because to actually throw it off is, again, it's like putting the wrong fuel in the car. It's like it'll just throw the engine off. You might get some ignition, but you're not going to get the full amount. If they're able to ignite that every time with the right amount of fuel, energy, whatever way you want to look at it, they're going to be able to kind of take that car and take it to wherever they want. And this is why you intrigued me so much kind of 16 months ago when you first asked me that question, and we've kind of taken this journey together. You've taught me a lot of what you know, and I'm still learning to this day, and it's amazing. And that I'm able to generally go out and repair people a lot quicker without having to do the analysis and using, it's as if I've just been given a toolbox that's already made up. And I didn't particularly have to go and to spend a lot of years of my life in it to be able to do that. I did it very, very quickly, and it might not hold a credible certificate like a lot of other people that are asked for, but in terms of the results that I get, I believe that I can do it a lot quicker than several psychologists and allow people to gain energy.
Right, and that's exactly what happens with the wall storage unit. Because if I have to teach you something you've never done, this is going to be 18 months. That's what everybody's amazed by, is when they learn this information, they're suddenly able to help people instantly. It's because I'm just going to teach you how the mind and brain works. I'm not going to teach you what to do, because you've already done this before. You might not realize it. And then when you learn how the mind and brain works, you go, John, I've done that. Good, do it more often. Well, I didn't know that. I didn't know that was the part that helped the person. Now I'll do it more often. So that's the advantage. So what I want to do is I want to bring this all together in what I call the 7 steps of generativity. So generativity is the ability to administer tension without abuse in order to replicate. So what we're talking about here is able to replicate people. I have a really bad business model. I don't treat people, and teach them treat them like patients. I try to turn people into psychologists. I try to turn people into me so they can go help other people. So I try to replicate myself. Because again, my goal is not to make you me. My goal is to make you the best version of you. And when you're the best version of you, you will help people the way you were meant to help people. And then that's going to replicate. So I'm not replicating you into be another John Lenhart. I'm trying to replicate you into being a person who can help people according to your uniqueness. And so there's these 7 steps. We teach this in the classroom. Parents have brought this home. When they found out what happened and how this is fixing things in the classroom, they brought it home. And I know every psychologist out there has done some form of this, but hasn't realized there is an intentional way to do something they've already done, and it fixes the brain. So the way I like to start this is I'll talk about a husband and a wife. And if the husband somehow abuses the wife, it could be emotionally. How many victims of abuse do we have in this scenario?
Mega amounts, mega.
A lot of people say 1. And the problem is if you resolve it, so how do you fix this? Resolve is you punish the guy.
Mm-hmm.
Does that help her?
No.
How does punishing him help her? Our whole legal system is based on, what would help you is if I punish that person. Aren't you in a much better spot now?
Yeah.
That's treating us all like animals.
Yeah. And it happens on a large scale, like all over the world.
Yes. So that's resolve. Solve is we're going to rehabilitate the person who abused you. We're going to make them go through all these steps. We're going to make them do all these things. And, every single day for the rest of their life, blah, 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 blah. That's abuse. We're wearing this person out. And that person has been abused. There's 2 people who have been abused in this, because this guy wouldn't hurt this woman if he hadn't been abused. So anything we do to this guy, if it's not something that's helping him, if it's abuse, we're abusing someone who's already been abused. Yeah. If we look at this as a scenario that both these people have been abused, and can we do a scenario where both these people repair, where both these people get better? And that's what I've been offering people. And that's what I've been offering psychologists, but I've been offering in school for years. So the way to do that, the way to help both, and it is tense, but the way to help both is, first of all, the person, so in this case, the husband, he needs to say 3 things he needs to say. I know what I did was wrong, and he needs to say what it is. I know why I did it. I don't want to do it again. So notice, here's the issue, is she can never relax around him because she doesn't know when the abuse is coming again. And so for her brain, He needs to say, because she goes, you know what? I don't even think he knows what he did was wrong. He needs to say to her, I know that yelling at you was wrong. That repairs part of her brain. But she goes, okay, maybe he knows it was wrong, but he doesn't know why he did it, so he could just do it again. I know why I did it. When I get frustrated with things at work, I come home and yell at you. Okay, now he knows why he did it. That repairs another part of her brain. But she goes, you know what? He might just want to do it. Maybe he just wants to do it. I don't want to do it again. At that point, her brain she is now restored. Her brain is restored at this point. She can now relax around this guy doing that, and she's restored. Now, notice what this guy did. I know what I did was wrong. Perceiver. I know why I did it. Teacher. I don't want to do it again. Compassion. He just did the first three intangible drivers in order.
Yep.
Good. Now, how does she get repaired? He needs to say to her, what can I do or give to you to make up for it? And then he needs to do it. So I like to say, you know, Colin, if I slapped you across the face, you'd have a negative emotion to me slapping you. If I slapped you across the face and gave you $1 million, anytime someone talked about a slap, you would laugh.
Yeah.
So is the abuse the thing that's causing you to feel bad about it? No. It's the emotion you've attached to it. This guy needs to do or give something to her to the point she can go, I'm glad you abused me because I ended up here. Giver, and then he has to actually do it, server. So he just did the next two steps in the intangible drivers, and this person is actually repaired. This person will feel better about the abuse. Whoa, we'll get back to that in a second. This person is still not settled. This person is still not repaired. Now, what this person needs to do is because what's happened is this. Here's really, because we're humans, here's what happens. This person abuses this person, and then they go to all their friends and go, you know, I had to yell at my wife last night, you know, because she's such a whatever, and he badmouths her to these people. He needs to now go to all these people he badmouthed her and tell everybody it was his fault and she's actually a good person. He needs to go administrate and exhort the last two intangible drivers. He needs to go to everybody and say, hey, remember when I told you last week, my wife, blah, blah, I yelled at her? Well, actually, that's me. I get frustrated. She's actually a wonderful woman, and exhort her up. Now, notice, these other people saw his wife like this before they heard it from him. Then when he said to her, she's blah, 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 they thought about her like this. Now when they come, because of this abuse, everybody actually thinks more highly of his wife. And the reality is this, everybody thinks more highly of the guy who abused. And that's the thing, think about it. We all think if I have to admit I'm wrong, people are gonna look down on me. Yet, do you look down at other people when they come up to you and admit when they're wrong?
No.
Why do we have that mental block? No, I can never admit I'm wrong because people will look down on me. Do you look down on other people when they admit they're wrong? No, I think that's great. I think it takes tremendous strength. I think there's your unconscious confrontation. And the proof that this guy is truly sorry about what he did is he's willing to talk about it. When people go, okay, I did it was wrong, now let's never talk about it again. They're not really sorry. This guy should be going, yeah, I'll talk about it again. I'll talk about the fact that I yelled at my wife and I got frustrated with work stuff. Yeah, I'll talk about it. When he does that, he now is in a better spot. He's shown humility. He is repaired. Both people are now better off because of the abuse. So a year ago, I went to a national problem-solving conference so I could share Dissolve.
Yes.
And so you can imagine how that went. when I was done speaking, there's video of it online, there was no applause, there was no nothing. Because I basically was telling everybody unconsciously, you are all hurting people when you apply your techniques to people. Solve gives everybody 3 more problems. There was another guy who actually presented that solving people's problems, the law of unintended consequences, hurts people and it puts more stress. So there was actually another person. But when I proved to everybody dissolve would get rid of this and that you're hurting all these people, I ended my talk with this, because I told the same story. And I said, when we're done with the abuse, are we happy the abuse happened? And you could have heard a pin drop. And I go, yes, we are. Because everybody ended up with more. And if you don't understand that, you're never going to understand generativity. And the example that I used during my talk was, a butterfly, when it goes in the cocoon, what happens is that when it breaks out of that cocoon, it is tension. It is the most tension that butterfly is ever going to feel in its life. And the tension of pulling out of that cocoon pumps, I don't know if it's blood or whatever, it pumps everything into the wings so it can fly. If you cut that cocoon open and help that butterfly avoid the tension, it never flies. If you help people avoid tension, are you helping them or hurting them? You are hurting them.
Absolutely.
This process is tense and everybody ends up with more. The trauma is tense. And if you use this process, people end up learning their uniqueness. They end up getting this burden. They end up feeling good about it. They're able to go forward. And everybody who holds it, everybody who tells this guy, you abuse your wife, everybody who does that, somebody goes to jail and serves their time. Everybody who abuses that person afterwards is giving that person justice or karma because they've served their time. Why do we bring up that a person's been in jail if they've served their time? Why do we do that? If you do that, you are pushing justice and karma against you. So when you look at what repair is and you get that definition, all of a sudden you can instantly diagnose what the problem in the world is and why we're not actually able to help people become better than they originally are, and how people can actually use trauma in their life to springboard them into it. And people do this haphazardly by experience. And all these great influential people overcame a trauma. And we all know that. Why don't we intentionally help people do that on purpose?
Yeah. Do you know what? I'm actually so blown away by your explanation there that there's not much I really want to add to that, if I'm completely honest. There's not much that I can add apart from the first time that I heard the story, not in that depth, but the first time I heard that story about both people being repaired and the abuse actually making the situation better. Sometimes, or all the time, we need that tension to learn. And I'm sure there was the thing about omission. If you learn from omission, you're not going to learn at all. And this is where we've got to actually go with learning from commission, which actually allows us both to repair and grow together. And we did a video on friendship as well. And just to kind of add this into the mix quickly before we go, friendship, you have to learn and you have to create tension to understand the other person, okay? Relationships, marriages, friendships, working relationships, all these things. So there has got to be some sort of, call it abuse, let's call it, for a better word, call it abuse. There's got to be some sort of abuse until both sides understand that we can't do that anymore, that we understand that I'm not able to do that anymore and you don't like that. Because the way that the world is worked upon just now is based on the victim has all the power. And while we're giving the power to the victim, the other people are not learning. And the victim is learning that it's all right to be the victim. And that's why they get given that label. So then they feel that they get this bubble of protection around them and the other people are just bad. When that other person, depending on their intention, okay, yeah, we'll give it that, depending on their intention of why they were doing what they did, could have been just trying to learn on the situation. And this is where I feel that the world's very confused in a lot of ways, John.
Right. So here's the last thing I'll say. I love that you brought in the friendship thing. So we talked about in movies, how did they meet? What did they connect over? the montage, the friendship in every movie is this moment where these two people make it through a tense situation.
Yeah.
And then they look at each other and go, they look up to each other more. And then they say, let's never let anything like that happen again, which is really like, let's completely prevent ourselves from growing in friendship. Because that's what that moment is in movies. It's the moment that makes the friendship and makes them both gain. And let's make sure it never happens again. We're humans. We grow through, computers don't grow through tension. We're not computers. We need to embrace the tension as long as it's not abuse. And we have a method for fixing abuse if we step into tension. And so that's why if we really understand we're human, we will embrace the tension because it's our opportunity to grow.
Yeah. Uniqueness first, and then diagnose, and then we get them all done. And it will literally change the world. If any psychologists want to just take on this model, you can help them be better. You can help them help people. You can help them repair people, and you can help them help people grow. And it's a beautiful thing, and it is just bringing humanity. Because just to finish off, psychology for me is very robotic. As much as it's great, and I commend all of these people in their studies and everything, it's very robotic. We're trying to put humanity back into humans and just allow them to grow within themselves. So no, thank you, John, and thank you for doing this series with me, and thank you for trying to help as many people that wish to allow you to come into their lives as possible. And it's been a pleasure. I look forward to doing our next one as well. Thank you so much. Take care.